Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groomed Week in Review for the week ending in October 19, 2025. Today, we're talking with Ambassador Dziunik Aghajanian, a diplomat, a former ambassador of Armenia to many countries, and today she's going to be our guest.
Hovik,
So,
before you go on, let me be the person this time interrupting and talking to our listeners. Thank you for following us. We are grateful to have your trust in bringing factual and truthful Armenian news to you every week. So we would also like to earn your support. And you can do that through our Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee pages, which you can access through podcasts.groom.org/donate. And you can hopefully become a sustaining member, or you can give once, whatever works for you. Now, we also know that that's not for everyone. And if you can't do that, you can still help. Comment, share, and like our shows with your friends and colleagues online and offline, because that will help new people discover us and help us reach new audiences. Thank you, everyone. And on with the show.
Dziunik Aghajanian, welcome back to Groomed.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Great to have you on board. Ambassador, Armenians always have one eye on the war in Ukraine because we expect once it resolves, Russia's posture towards the South Caucasus will change, so life for Armenia will start evolving as well. There's been a lot of talk about Trump approving the sending of Tomahawk nuclear-capable missiles to Zelensky, who was in D.C. this past week. Trump seems to be either flip-flopping on the issue, or the issue is not about that. It's actually about negotiating some kind of a price with Putin for not sending the missiles to Ukraine. So is the Tomahawk issue a real issue, or is it another bargaining chip for Trump?
Well, I think Trump approached politics the same way as he approached his business projects. And that's the right word to use with him, because it's never an agreement. It's never a final compromise decision on sides that are part of a conflict or a situation. He is trying to make a deal. And part of his deal is to start showing some kind of a force and then bring it down a little bit, kind of opening up doors for negotiation. That I think this is his tactics. He has been using it since he has come to power, and we have seen multiple demonstrations of this particular position. Tomahawks could be positioned, but the same way as the Abrahams, the tanks were passed to Ukraine, we will see more like one or two being passed as a symbol of their participation, whereas the main rockets will be transferred from his allies in different parts of the world that are holding these rockets. But right now, it's not going to happen. But I think that Putin, he has explained in very vivid terms, I would use this word, that any move towards passing tomahawks to Ukraine, be it from the US side, be it from his allies' side, will be perceived from the Russian side as direct participation of the US in the Ukrainian war, actually turning the Ukrainian war into a Trump war, not being perceived it as a past administration endeavor. And also it would mean changing the whole dimension of the conflict, making all NATO parts that will be used for the launch of Tomahawk as direct targets for the responsive actions from the Russian side. And I think this is something that has put Trump a bit at an awkward. I think what he is hearing from his members of administration or different parts of this administration is that simply acting as a teller in the story would mean coercing Russia into some kind of an unacceptable deal that actually Russia will never go for that, and will never go because Russia has given 20 years of a corridor for any kind of agreement with the Western powers, explaining that this action and that action are not acceptable. Those actions are endangering the security of Russia, and they are not actually either part of democratic action or any kind of a partnership behavior. And they have seen that the West was acting as if there was no Russia to take into consideration, and the only participant in the game is the West and their wishes to gain power and gain an upper hand in the resources of Russia and the neighboring countries. So this is something that Russia has already put aside as part of the past experience, and they are not going to repeat it. It's not going to happen. So Tomahawk situation might come back, but that would mean definitely that Trump is becoming part of the war, and the war is turning into a Trump war. But I don't think that's going to happen now when he's playing a king, given the situation in Gaza or the theatrical performance we saw played out there about the Gaza situation. And I don't think he's going to do that right now when he's stepping into an electoral period.
Regarding the comment that you made about Russia having given about 20 years of opportunity for the West to understand how to achieve peace, we were going to ask you if Russia's red lines have actually shifted at all over the past year or so, because we even heard from the Washington Post recently that Russia has proposed a ceasefire in exchange for full control of Donbass and parts of Kherson and Zaporozhye. Do you think that these reports are credible, and have the Russians shifted their red lines about Ukraine?
No, Russians have not changed their red lines, and what Washington Post has given is only one part of the story. This, according to what I have heard from the Russian side and read about it, alongside with the ceasefire, it should be neutral status for Ukraine, demilitarization of the Ukrainian forces, no actual presence of any NATO or NATO-related country in the territory, etc., etc., etc. So they are just speaking about one part, which is the territories, acceptance of those territories being part of Russia, and Russia is not. Actually, yes, it would be nice to hear from them that they are accepting it as part of Russia, but constitutionally they are part of Russia. So take it or leave it. This is the situation. And I think this is just, as usual, Washington Post is giving only the part that they want to highlight for the audience, whereas leaving the most important part out, which are hurting the European stance especially. And I think behind the European stance is the American stance, which still wants to keep Ukraine as part of a military playground for future operations.
So after 3.5 years, why isn't Putin finished with Ukraine? Why haven't we seen the end of this conflict?
Because we have to perceive this conflict as not only a military one, but also as a psychological and economic one, and also as a geopolitical one. So let me explain it. Psychologically, I think both the Russian society and the Western societies are going through transformation periods. Just go back to 22 and you will remember this enormous anti-Russian rhetoric, people marching under the banners of no Russian and cancellation of any Russian, etc., etc. And they were thinking that if they just strike Russia in just several months. So this transformation has taken place, and the European and the Western societies have understood that this was simply a neo-colonial game being played by hegemonic powers and those standing in this line that were trying to actually use the resources, the Russian resources, and in a manner that would simply destroy the country, not as equal partners or as business partners, but simply exploiting the country and its resources. So this transformation has taken place in the European or in the Western hemisphere, Western part of the political world. Also, the West as such has lost both the political weight and the military weight. We have seen the military resources of the West actually being grinded in the Ukrainian war, and it has shown that the blown up image of this Western weaponry does not correspond to the reality. The Russian society went through a transformation of total belief towards Western values into total disbelief towards these values, and the understanding that these were only tools in the hands of the Western countries trying to mingle in the internal affairs of the country with the ultimate purpose of actually destroying it. So if we go into economic, we will see the same transformation. If we go into geopolitical and military transformation, we will see that Russia has totally changed the military industry and the defense industry and the production in the country, and has put forward the projects that have been sitting decades actually even from the Soviet times, and has changed the military weight of the country during those periods. So if we go through this understanding of each of the aspects, we will see that Russia has achieved more with non-rushing into this blanket type of attacks towards Ukraine. First, because it perceived the Ukrainian people as part of its family, as kinship, and secondly, because it would have turned them into total enemies psychologically. Whereas now most of the Ukrainians really understand what has been played out, and that they have been put forward as the only anti-Russian gun in a way, shooting at Russia and trying to use the manpower to fight against Russia.
So Trump and Putin may meet in Budapest in a couple of weeks. It's not certain yet, so who knows what will happen. And of course, you might ask, why Budapest? Why Hungary? Well,
no, it's totally understandable.
Trump said, we like Viktor Orban. Putin likes him. I like him. So I guess that's a good reason. Meanwhile, the EU has demanded that Hungary must arrest Putin if he lands in Budapest. But we already know that Orban will flaunt the law, the international law, because earlier this year in April, Netanyahu visited, and he has ICC arrest warrants on him for genocide. But Orban was clear that he would not arrest Netanyahu. So I'm sure that the same will transpire with Putin. Why is this Putin-Trump summit needed, though? What has changed since the summit in Alaska to warrant a new one?
Well, I think what has changed is the situation in the Middle East, or the deal that he presented as a victory in the Middle East.
First time in 3,000 years.
Well, yeah. The thing is that, the US is the sole teller in this story. Let's not forget who is supporting Israel. Israel cannot fight the war without the total US support. Let's not forget that Qatar and Turkey are the US allies, and they are working under the leadership and under the guidance of the US, and money flows from these coffers into different parts of the country, keeping them as NATO ally and also as the anti-Iranian force there, and the other one as part of the game against Arabic unification and acting as the one that is dividing the Arab unity and not allowing it to come together. And Egypt is the one that is actually, again, depending on the US money going into the country and also military force supporting Egypt. So if we look at the picture, US has told his right hand to act with the left hand and to sign a deal that the only purpose of which was to save Israel from its internal upheavals and demonstrations that were destroying Netanyahu administration. And the only purpose was to get the hostages out and to free the hand for the Israeli government to act in Gaza by cleansing it. So we have seen already members of the Israeli administration coming out and saying that we have to continue the war.
What does Putin have to do with it? Because he's mostly, by and large, stayed out of the Gaza issue.
I'll explain. So the way the Trump process, he told players, actually he put them into a non-option position, saying that if you don't act like I want, you won't get anything from us. So in that way, he got his way. Now he's trying to bring the same approach towards Russia-Ukrainian conflict. And I think that Zelensky's visit was the purpose. So he told Zelensky, either you do the way I say, or you don't do anything, or you don't get anything. So I think the same approach is being transferred into Ukrainian-Russian situation, but I don't think that's going to work because neither Zelensky nor definitely Putin is going to play this theatrical performance, which is against Russia's security and position in the world.
Dziunik John, we talked about the Washington Post describing Putin's new demands in terms of a step back, a concession, because previously, before the Alaska summit, Putin was talking about Odessa or hinting about Odessa. And if this is accurate, and we don't know if Washington Post is accurate, and they have been falsifying news before,
We have seen that
yeah.
in vivid presentation since 2001, I think.
Yeah, but if it is, so does this mean that Russia is scaling back its demands? And will the Russian public and the many powers of Kremlin, as they say, the people in power in Kremlin that are not Putin, would they accept something like that? What can we really expect from the outcome in Budapest?
What did he actually say about Odessa?
Well, I'm not sure, but previously, before it was just that the media was saying that they were making references to Odessa, Nikolaev, and it just seemed that Russia was intent on taking that as well. Meanwhile, according to the Washington Post story, Putin is content saying that we want Donbass, Kherson, and Zaporozhye, and then we can stop the fighting if those three are given. So it seems like a scaling back of territorial demands.
The current official position, which was articulated in 2022, refers only to the 4 regions that have become part of Russia through referendum. But if the war goes on, I don't exclude other regions, not only Odessa, Nikolaev, or others, or opting to become part of Russia, because none of them wants to get destroyed or devastated, and there are people being thrown onto the front line as part of the gunpowder. So I think we will not see much in Budapest. We will see some kind of a promise of bilateral relations improving somehow. And I think for Russians, a sign of this improvement will be getting back their property in the US that has been taken as a result of the sanctions, or removing some of the sanctions. And I mean the property of the diplomatic representations. And that would be the sign that Trump is really serious. But I don't think Trump is going to do that. So it will be another meeting where Putin will explain the situation in very clear terms. And Trump will come out and say that he's in good relations and with Putin. Putin is his friend, and he's trying to solve this issue that is killing thousands and thousands of people. And then we will see no action going forward, and then we will see you rushing into administration mind and trying to get there. I think it's the 19th package of sanctions out. So we will see those things till
I'm just
December.
concerned that the bargaining chips have now become nuclear capable missiles, the Tomahawks. I mean,
I don't think
it's a huge upscaling of the bargaining chips.
it's a huge upscaling. Of course, they will not use the nukes, but if they try to use the Tomahawks, and they are trying to use Tomahawks in order to hit the industrial sector of the Russia inside the country, which is providing all this military equipment. And again, they are stepping into this this wrong perception that by hitting the country or killing people inside the country, they will turn the Russian people against Putin. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah, look
They
at
are
Iran.
of course, because I have been thinking about this for a long time. Why? And I think the reason is that the US does not have a core population, that could call the country as a motherland. Whereas for Russia, for Iranians, for us, the land is part of our identity. So any threat towards identity brings unification, no matter whether you agree with the external or internal demonstration of this identity. Would you want it changed? You want it advanced? It doesn't matter. You do not turn against your own identity, and your homeland is part of your identity. This is not the perception in the West. That's the wrong perception that they have been keeping in the mind and working against for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's why they are losing war after war while actually attacking Russia, because they don't understand the psychology of people. And this is how it works.
Let's move to Gaza real quick. On Monday, October 13th, in Sharm el-Sheikh, with the leaders of Qatar and Turkey at his two sides, Trump claimed with great bombacity that in the first time in 500 years, and then he edited himself and said, no, 3,000 years, he has brought peace to the region. Neither Israel nor Hamas showed up to the meeting, but already there are claims of violations, and a fresh bombing campaign happened less than a day into the when the ceasefire was supposed to take place. So all this self-congratulation aside by Trump, what is taking place in the Middle East? What is taking place in the Gaza? What is the plan, or is there a plan that we're not seeing? Because this is just seems to be, at least from our perspective, just like a temporary pause.
Well, I think we're seeing a serious preparation to strike Iran, and this whole thing was part of this game. It was a very nicely worked out project to release the hostages. That was a pain in the neck for the Netanyahu administration, and its own public was demonstrating hundreds and thousands coming out into the streets, not allowing him to work as he wants to work, and to fight his neighbors in order to get this greater Israel dream becoming truth. So that was the only thing that this project served, and it served bringing the hostages home, some of the bodies home, and releasing the Israeli Netanyahu administration's hands in going forward with his plans, the ultimate goal of which is the reconstruction of the Middle East and making it dependent on Israel, and with Israel on the US.
You mentioned Iran, and actually we'll go there, but it was prominently featured that the leaders of Qatar and Turkey were on his side. And in general, I think that Turkey has been playing a um, very diplomatic and very complex game in this whole war. I mean, it has sometimes even threatened military action against Israel. It has vowed to defend Palestinians, but then the Israeli attack against Gaza would not be possible in the first place if only Erdogan had turned off the valve for the petroleum that flows into Israel from Azerbaijan. So how important was the role of Qatar and Turkey in this process, and what is their role in this game?
I think Qatar's role is clearer than Turkey's, and it has been actually working in line with U.S. administration. Of course, they were hosting the Hamas leadership, but that was also part of this total reconstructing of the Middle Eastern game that was initiated, I think, in the middle of 2000s when Hamas was created in order to put it against the Palestinian administration. And that's where Israel also took part in the creation of Hamas. Uh, again, with the divide and rule policy that we have seen. With Turkey, it's much more interesting. Turkey, as always, has played a multifaceted game. On the surface, it was criticizing Israel and loudly calling it a genocidal state, but selling its own goods through Cyprus to Israel, as you mentioned, allowing the Azeri oil to flow into Israel, which it used for the tanks and other vehicles to attack Gaza. So this is part of this game where Turkey is brought up by the West as the leader of the Islamic world and the main actor in the Middle East from the Islamic part. And that's where you see the controversy with the Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia and also Iran, which cannot accept any kind of a leading role on behalf of Turkey because first and foremost, Turkey is a member of NATO. It means that it's part of the Western hegemonic game that is played out in the Middle East. So I think with Turkey, it's more of a role played out, whereas the sole purpose of the Western support to Turkey is to turn it against Iran, actually to use it against Iran, to which it has agreed. And part of this agreement was allowing it to destroy Syria and gain parts of Syria as part of its
Spoils, basically.
spoil. Yeah, it's a spoil. Yeah, and I think in the same way they allowed Turkey to fight against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and give Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan for the purpose of using the territory for striking Iran.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Iran. Many experts and analysts worry about an attack on Iran being in the works. The most prominent in Western media is Trita Parsi, who has warned back in August that Israel's government has unfinished business with Iran, and another round of strikes weeks or months away, and that such a war would likely pull in the United States. Of course, those that think that Trita Parsi is the originator of this concern should watch our podcast more because if they had watched Dziunik Aghajanian before, they would know that we have been talking about this for a long time. So,
Yes, and
I,
I've mentioned that we should expect it sometimes end of August up until middle of November.
right. So, what's your assessment? What's your current assessment of the likelihood of an attack on the war in Iran? It seems like you think that the so-called ceasefire in Gaza is just like is essentially not a game changer in that equation. Is that right? Or is that even part of the equation?
It's part of the equation. It's part of the equation. The Hamas and could do nothing but agree to the release of hostages for the sake of getting some humanitarian aid into the area, and with the hope that they will gain some time to breathe, I think. But the game is not over. We are almost end of October, so if nothing happens within the next week or 10 days, then it would mean that the strike against Iran has moved to February-March period. But according to my understanding, is that the West is, and under the US leadership, is getting seriously ready for this attack, and they are using, they are kind of pushing themselves in a that they would think would guarantee their success in this case. And I think this will be also part of the talks in Budapest with Russia. That's why Trump is also trying to kind of appease Russia in a way to stay away from supporting Iran when this attack happens. But I don't think it's going to work.
So in the past, we have talked about Iran's reactions to being encircled or being threatened from the north, from Armenia. It has stated red lines that it would defend the sovereignty of Armenia, sometimes even despite Armenia, despite the current leadership of
Most of the
Armenia.
time,
Yeah.
despite the modern leadership of
But
our current leadership of Armenia.
has the revelation of the Trump route, that the August meeting in the White House, changed Iran's calculus towards Armenia in this
No,
regard?
I don't think so. And depending on, given the pronouncement that we heard from the higher leadership of Iran, they understand the situation very well. But they still hope that with the passage of time, the situation will change and that will kind of push back a little bit or push afar the possibility of the development. But I don't think that they have been really cheated into believing that this so-called trip is a mere road that will connect for the trade purposes, and there will be no issue with the security or with the threat against Iran. I think they very well. That's why the Armenian side, the current administration in my country, is trying to present, and we see different kind of delegations on different levels going to Iran or talking to them and trying to explain that it's not the case. Don't worry, it's only trade. I don't think they believe a single word coming out from them. Moreover, we have seen a delegation from the US that has come to so-called examine the situation on the ground and give suggestions and work out the details of the agreement for the trip. And we haven't heard a single word about what they actually did and what agreements have been achieved. So it adds on mistrust towards the ultimate purpose of this trip.
Yeah. So in Israel, they actually discussed publicly what they like to do to Iran. They like to dismember it, and not by sending in an army, that would be too expensive, but by instigating a collapse from within and stoking separatism. To remind our listeners, Iran has pockets of Kurdish, Arabic, Turkish, Azeri, or Turkic speaking minorities that have in the past, at one time or another, have been induced to rise up against the government. And a large Azerbaijani-speaking population lives in the north, bordering Azerbaijan itself and also bordering Turkey. We've seen many analysts on the show that have highlighted Azerbaijan's potential to when it comes to partitioning Iran and its chosen role, and less often talked about, however, is Turkey's role in this. Although we've seen, like, for instance, sometimes Turkish TV shows featuring interviews of Turkish generals who talk about the need to ensure the security of their brethren if the need arises. So we've talked about Israel's cooperation with Azerbaijan in the past, but seeing Erdogan at Trump's side made me think about what role might be in the script or in the playbook for Turkey in all this. And of course, we know that Turkey would not be against expanding its influence even more, but we're just wondering if Erdogan would be so adventurous as to even think about being part of an attack on against Iran. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we have discussed this before, and I have explained that this whole game that was played out with regard to Nagorno-Karabakh is part of the bigger geopolitical game of reconstructing the whole region, getting resources both in the Caspian and in the Central Asian region under the Western hegemony, and using both Turkey and Azerbaijan for these purposes. And they have been part of the agreement to act as such. The only difference was that the Russia-Ukrainian situation did not allow their plans to go as they initially understood it should work out, because they were thinking that Russia will fall apart or the Russian leadership will change, so the situation will be different, and then will easily attack with the Western mightful powers and military equipment. They will attack Iran with no hit back from their side. But the situation changed. And with the current situation, when you have the Ukrainian side with no proper military resources being provided to them, with Israeli war going on, again, with difficulties of military weaponry being provided to them, Turkey and Azerbaijan are unwilling to act as they have promised. And that's why they are pushing back on their part of the game that they would have played already in 2023, exactly after the fall of Nagorno-Karabakh. We saw Azerbaijan position and getting better relations with Iran, and then changing their position and getting better relations with Russia. You have this grain agreement, wheat agreement with Russia from Turkish side. So they are shifting their positions in order to delay the demand from them to act according to their agreements, according to their to the understanding what role they have to play, because both Turkey and Azerbaijan understand that they will be using their own military resources with no possible plans of replenishing them, because the US cannot provide for 4 or 5 wars at the same time, and the Western countries have no resources to do so. So it would mean putting both Turkey and Azerbaijan at risk of actually losing the countries and losing the powers for Aliyev and for Erdogan, because now they are at the top of their prestige, they are at the height of their achievements, and just falling down from this height, I don't think any political leader, especially the very nuanced Turkic leaders, are not going to do that. That's why you see sometimes playing with the US administration, trying to gain some agreements with regards to F-16s, of F-35 aircrafts, and other agreements on their ruling of the Kurdish parts in Syria, or getting some other areas in Syria. So it's part of a give and take from different sides, trying to push the Erdogan administration and push Aliyev into acting according to the agreements that have been put forward before even everything that we saw in the Ukrainian front, or before even we saw in 2020 in the Caucasus started. So this is part of this bigger game being played out. It's simply that Erdogan and Aliyev do not want to lose either fight that they have gained up until now, or the political prestige that they have gained up until now. So this is what is happening. But I think we will see different kind of pressurizing acts or events happening, and the recent one was that somehow the Azeri oil that was considered to be not fit for the European market. So this was part of this carrot and stick policy that is being played out, and both the Brits and the US American administrations are trying to push them to act, and the Israelis are also part of the game. But I think we will see with the time some melting down of the relations, and we saw currently with the Azeri and Russian relations some meltdown, and then we will see again straining them when the time comes to act, and they will be playing this back and forth game for several times as more. We will see what happens, but I think for the coming days, up to 10 days, we have this period for Netanyahu to again strain the situation in the Middle East. But I don't think he will go for Iran now. I don't think they're ready fully for Iran. I think he's getting more prepared in the surrounding areas, like in Lebanon, and we will see in Syria. Kind of going forward and getting his positions better placed for the actions. We will see development in Pakistan, Afghanistan side, as we have seen, because part of the plan is to use these so-called terrorist groups for destabilization of Iran from inside, and using their connections to do so. We will see some kind of development in the Azerbaijan, not Aliyev's Azerbaijan, the real, which is simply Iranian people speaking the Turkic language, and trying to increase the possibility of some kind of a separatist movement going forward. So we will see this preparation being made towards the bigger, more unexpected attack. But I think Iranian side understands the situation well. Russia understands it well. China understands it well. India understands it well. And I think they are preparing as well for the coming developments. I don't think our government understands it well, because we don't see, I see preparation for giving up any defensive possibilities for the country rather than unifying the country against the coming risks.
Just to close this topic, Aliyev and Pashinyan were also in Sharm el-Sheikh, but I don't know their place in it. But we'll come back to it a little bit later. But I want to bring us to Armenia, our section of the insane asylum that is the world politics right now. At home, Pashinyan's repression intensified greatly. On Wednesday, October 13th, authorities raided offices and homes of the Armenian Apostolic Church clergy and employees in Aragatoten province, arresting Bishop Mkrtich Bedrossian and a dozen other clergy and staff. In fact, in total right now we have 2 archbishops, 1 bishop, and multiple priests right now.
And vicars.
And vicars, yes. And the following day, the compliant courts ordered 2-month pretrial detention for Bishop Bedrossian. The government alleges that Bedrossian had compelled his priests, to attend opposition rallies. Of course, the news coming in just today, we're recording this on Monday, is that Vartan Ghulkasyan, mayor of Gyumri, the second largest city in Armenia, has been arrested. There are demonstrations. And just if you think that these are isolated cases, let me just try to brief you about some of the things that also happened in the last weeks, okay? Just 2 weeks ago, Archbishop Mikhail Aghajanian was sentenced to 2 years in prison, basically for saying something, for his speech. Hovik Manucharyan, a patron of the church, had his pretrial detention extended by another month. And again, that was for something that he said. He said, in our own way, we will combat this in our own way. One of the lawyers for Archbishop Bagrat Serpazan, or Bagrat, Archbishop Bagrat or Bagrat Serpazan, Alexander Kochubayev, was also in pretrial detention on different charges. He was arrested by masked law enforcement for something he wrote on Facebook, and he was taken. He was basically splayed out on asphalt, very demeaning treatment. And this is a lawyer
Like
we're
an
talking
armed
about.
criminal.
Like an armed terrorist, not even just a criminal. And this act was condemned by the International Commission of Jurists. And yet, here is all the EU had to say about Armenia. And I'm quoting Vasilis Maragos, the EU representative to Armenia. The European Union is ready to assist in the creation of a US-administered transit corridor that would connect Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan province through Armenia's strategic Sunik region. That
Hovik,
is
I'm absolutely incensed. I'm absolutely incensed that they talk about values and other of their ideas and stuff like that. There's not a single word from them about all of these infringements on their own values by the Armenian government. And all they talk about is basically their interest in connecting two parts of Azerbaijan across Armenia. There's nothing
And
from
yeah,
Europe.
the examples we read were just a few, but yeah, and it's funny that they allow Pashinyan to make loud announcements that Armenia wants to join the EU when it's just surreal, it's like double speak, or is it double talk in from 1984 when he's saying something and doing the exact opposite. But I want to go to Dziunik by asking, why is he targeting the church? I mean, this is reminiscent of the Stalinist purges in Armenia 80, 90 years ago, if you ask me. I mean, it seems very concerted effort to target the Armenian Apostolic Church as part of this, whatever these games are.
Well, you're misreading the EU expressions, because they are giving out the main purpose for which they have been acting and what they have been doing for the last more than 20 years. The only purpose they have is to go forward with their plans, as I explained, to start the war with Iran, to deconstruct the whole region, to push Russia out of this area, to gain the resources both in the Caspian and in the Central Asia. So for this purpose, they would close their eyes, they would shut their mouth, they would close their ears and notice nothing that is happening. Moreover, they will give a green light to what is happening. They have shown it in Romania, they have shown it in Moldova, they have shown it in their own countries, that no democratic value exists in actuality. No human rights exist in actuality. They will speak about that if it serves their own purpose. If it does not, they will not even notice that any problem exists. So what is doing the current Armenian administration is at the full go ahead from the European Union, from the European countries, that they are saying, just do what you have promised. Just achieve what we have put forward for you, for what we have brought you to power, so that we can do what we have to do. And for that purpose, we see the repressions in Armenia, because we have elections in Echmiadzin, in Vagar Shapat community, and you did not mention about the killing of the elected leader of the Parakar community, and it is definitely political killing. And we see this straight line of actually decapitating any opposition leader that could unite the population and take the population out into the streets. So this is what the current leadership with Prime Minister sitting at the top is doing. They are cleansing the area from any opposition leader that would stop the plans from implementation. And they have the time ticking for them. So they have to do it very quickly. They know that they have no rating in the country. They know that the people understand well what the ultimate purpose of this current administration was, that they are serving the Turkish and Azeri plans and agenda. So this is what they are doing, and they have the blessing and the go-ahead from both the US administration and the European countries. So this is the sole purpose. Get the trip operational so that we can transfer the heavy weaponry and the manpower from Turkey to Azerbaijan so that they can be part of the land attack on Iran. This is the sole purpose that is put forward currently against the Armenian administration.
The only other comment I have is, Archbishop Bedrossian is a relative of the Catholicos. This entire attack against the church started after the Catholicos went to burn Switzerland and talked about the rights of Artsaksis, and then immediately the leader of the so-called Caucasian Muslims in Azerbaijan started speaking up against the Armenian church, saying that the Armenian
No,
church is a
they
source of
spoke
natural.
about the church
Yeah,
well ahead,
yeah.
before as well.
But
And
in terms
they
of
have mentioned the
media,
church
yeah,
and the diaspora as the ones that are standing against their plans of achieving their ultimate goal of making Armenia totally depend on them, on Azerim, turning Armenia into Western Azerbaijan. So this is also part of the plan because the population in Armenia does not agree. Armenian church is part of Armenian identity. The identity does not allow any foreign occupation or any foreign rule over its own people. So they are trying to actually demontage the church, the only institution that is still standing. And their attacks against Catholics is simple, just a case for them to go forward and to deconstruct, also to divide Armenia from diaspora, because Armenian church is also the uniting power of Armenian diaspora, and most of the unification comes through the Armenian identity that the church has carried for thousands and thousands of years. So this is the ultimate thing of making Armenia dependent and actually killing all Armenianness in this part of the world. That's what it said. It killing the soul of Armenians, killing the opposition power within Armenians, not to act according to the wishes and wills of its own enemies. So this is what's happening, and for that the repressions will go, they will increase, and for that we will see. That's why they want just the way Turks acted during the genocide. They killed all they decapitated the nation. They killed the people that could unite and make the population stand against Turks and not allow the killings to go forward. So this is the same policy being carried out. The worst part of it, that it is being carried out by our own administration.
Yeah, April 24 was the start of the killing of the intellectual and spiritual leadership of the nation.
Before they gathered all the them to service and kill them there, so that there would be no man standing and fighting against the Turkish murderers. The same thing is happening now.
All right. I am going to wrap up our topics here. We're out of time. And obviously, it's time for me to ask each of you to share some thoughts with our listeners, if you would like. Dziunik, anything you would like to share?
Well, I think the only picture that comes into my mind is our prime minister standing there as part of the decoration in Sharm el-Sheikh, as part of the back frame for the picture, and also trying to explain who he is to Trump, with whom he signed this world-breaking deal just 2 months ago. So I think either his looks are not so good, or Trump's memory is not so good, that he had to present himself again in order for Trump to remember that Armenia is not Albania, and the war is not between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but the war is for the Armenian identity.
Hovik, what's on your mind?
Well, just that I think that, what Dziunik is saying, I want to fully agree with. Um, the Armenian church is, an irrevocable part of the Armenian identity. And I think people who think that they can edit that identity, with ease are mistaken. But yeah, I mean, whether you're a secular Armenian or whether you are a religious Armenian, whether you go to church every Sunday, I think that the church has a very strong position in the life of Armenians in general, and it's troubling that this is going to lead to more conflict and more division in Armenia if this continues. But I saw reports in the media that Pashinyan is targeting October 28th, which was the um, date of the anointment or coronation of Catholicos Gheorghe II, as a date during which he will try to essentially take over the Armenian church and get Gheorghe, either arrest him or somehow force him to step down.
So
This,
theoretically, that's next Tuesday in 8 days.
yeah, I hope that's wrong, but I would not put that, you know,
We have to be vigilant.
yeah, yeah.
We have to
So
be vigilant and not allow that to happen.
agree, and I hope that the Armenian public is ready, because I don't see any letdown in these tensions, and we will try to keep our listeners and viewers abreast of any new developments in this area.
All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That was our Week in Review show, recorded on October 20, 2025. We've been talking with Ambassador Dziunik Aghajanian, who served Armenia through the ranks of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and most recently as a diplomat as Armenia's ambassador to such countries as the Netherlands, Malaysia, and Indonesia. She received her education at Yerevan State University, Columbia University in New York, and Uppsala University in Sweden.
I want to thank you again for following us. Thank you for liking and sharing our content. So just please, one more reminder that in case you haven't liked and shared our content yet, do that before you close your YouTube viewer, and we'll be eternally grateful. And if you actually can afford and are willing to help us out financially, the location for that is podcasts.groom.org/donate, and any amount you provide will go towards improving the efficiency. Asbed and I spent many hours preparing for the material, editing it afterwards, and then publishing it. So we want to expedite that process. That will allow us to focus more time on new episodes, or, I apologize for this, but also sleep, which is important. So thank you.
I'm Asbed Bedrossian in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan in Los Angeles.
We'll talk to you next week.
Hadi olsun.